This Range Rover Sport came to us with over 2,05,000 kilometers on the odometer. It's not often we see a Range Rover with this kind of mileage. That in itself is quite rare. And on top of that, this SUV actually runs and drives quite well. The first thing that stood out to us wasn't even the problems. It was the overall condition of the car itself. For a 2 lakh kilometer driven Range Rover, this thing was surprisingly clean, tight, and mechanically sorted. Being in this industry, you can immediately tell when an owner has spent serious time, money, and effort maintaining a car over the years. A lot of people think buying a luxury car is the expensive part. In reality, maintaining it correctly after 1,50,000, 2 lakh kilometers is a real challenge. The owner's main complaint with this car was oil leaks. Once we started inspecting it, we realized the leaks were quite extensive. The biggest source of the leak was from both the valve covers. Oil was leaking from top of the engine and making its way all the way down. But that wasn't all. We also found leaks from the throttle body gaskets, front and rear main oil seals, and the oil pan gasket. So this quickly turned into a major engine resealing job. And while diagnosing the oil leaks, we also started finding coolant leaks from the thermostat housing, water pump, and multiple coolant hoses. At this stage, there's no point doing temporary fixes or partial repairs. So we decided to address everything properly in one shot. Both valve covers, injector washers, throttle body gaskets, oil pan gasket, front and rear main oil seals, thermostat housing, water pump, coolant hoses, coolant elbow, and the overflow pipe were replaced. And to properly access all these components, this basically became an engine and transmission out job. Now, once you're already this deep into the engine, it simply makes sense to address all the critical bells and pulleys proactively. This engine uses two timing belts, one for the main engine timing system and another dedicated for the high pressure fuel pump. We replaced both timing belts along with the tensioners and pulleys. We also replaced the complete dry belt kit. Now, realistically, at this mileage, these belts were most likely replaced at least once earlier in the car's life. But when the engine and transmission are already out, it simply doesn't make sense taking chances with old timing components. Because if one of these belts fail, especially on an engine like this, the repair bill can go from preventative maintenance to catastrophic engine damage very quickly. We also found a cracked turbo hose during the inspection, so that was replaced as well. And since everything was already apart, we didn't want to just replace parts and throw the engine back together. We took the opportunity to thoroughly clean the entire intake system as well. The EGR system, intake manifold, and throttle body were removed completely and cleaned properly to remove all the carbon buildup accumulated over the years. We also cleaned the main radiator and auxiliary radiators thoroughly before refitting everything. Now, moving on to the suspension side of things, surprisingly, for a 2,05,000 kilometers driven Range Rover, this car actually felt fairly tight. The suspension noise itself was fairly minor. After inspection, the primary source of the noise was found to be coming from the differential mounts and bushes, steering ball joints, tie rod ends, and anti-roll bar bushes. So we replaced all of them. The car also had noticeable cabin vibrations and harshness, especially at idle and under load. So we replaced both the engine and transmission mounts as well, which made a significant difference to the overall refinement of the car. And finally, once all the major mechanical work was completed, we carried out a complete fluid and filter service on the car. Engine oil and all filters were replaced. We also performed the transmission service by replacing the transmission fluid and filter. Apart from that, the transfer case fluid, and differential fluids were replaced as well. And while wrapping up the remaining smaller issues, we also replaced one of the faulty power window regulators. So overall, this turned out into a fairly extensive preventative maintenance and restoration job rather than just a simple repair. This job is a perfect example of what it actually takes to maintain cars like these once they cross serious mileage. This particular Range Rover took us nearly 2 weeks of work to complete, and before that, another 2 to 3 weeks just to procure all the required parts. And kudos to the owner as well. Even we were slightly surprised that he decided to go ahead and do all these works properly. Owners like this are actually very rare. Most people see a huge service estimate on an older luxury car and immediately decide to sell the vehicle and move on to the next one. Very few owners are willing to commit to maintaining these cars properly long term. And that's exactly why you hardly see Range Rovers crossing this kind of mileage while still running and driving this well. This car is proof that luxury cars can absolutely survive high mileage, but only when the owner understands that maintaining them properly costs real money. These are not cars for people with patch up mindset. The moment owners start postponing repairs, using cheap parts, or ignoring preventative maintenance, these cars start deteriorating very quickly.